Manhood is through competence. People mistake competence for control.
They're doing more controlling behaviors than they are influencing and empowering others. That's a level of trauma. As a grown adult, I have to ask permission to do the most basic things. There's an insurmountable amount of pride that always wells up when I watch you.
Have you ever been undermined by a bad leader? Has dominance ever been mistaken for leadership in you or someone else? Are you trusted as a leader or just obeyed as a boss? If those questions resonate, then you're in the right place. Stephen DeGuzman was a key instructor of mine for Airmen Leadership School, and his knowledge has been pivotal in how I operate as a mentor in leadership. In addition to the 500 airmen that he trained, he was recruited by the Space Force during its inception to help its senior leadership develop effective personnel and policy. And I can only hope that you get the powerful insights that he gave me, because I think it's going to help you grow as a leader. Let's get started. I'm really excited to share some of the perspective that you bring with everybody, because it has been so pivotal in my career and my growth. Like I was telling you a little bit before, I'm really proud of my military service. The 5 years I was in absolutely changed my life. And through that time, I was pretty successful. I won a number of awards, but the only awards that are on my wall that don't change are from our time together at Airmen Leadership School.
Right.
And you were a big part of that. And I don't know if I ever fully told you the story of that, but when I had transitioned to England, I had a really rough start. Me and the initial command and leadership I was with weren't working out very well.
I recall something to that effect when we all introduced ourselves, and in our curriculum, we have a lot of set questions, right? So if you're there for leadership, one of the basic questions you should expect is, what are some good examples of leadership? And what are some bad examples or not so good? We offer the fact that it's a safe space for you all because it's a learning environment, right? Non-attribution kind of rule sets. And yeah, I recall numerous students kind of with varying degrees of some like off the wall, I couldn't make this stuff up stories. I'm like, I can't believe we have those type of leaders in our military, but we do.
Yeah, I figure I'm really lucky that there was only ever one tragically bad leader. I think it was just like I didn't onboard well in the changing of environments, and the support I needed to do so wasn't as available as it could have been. I don't want to trash everybody there, but it made it harder. And it was just so wonderful at the end of our time together, having my commander, having my first sergeant come and see me get those awards, hear my voice, and explicitly like why I got the award I got for getting all the guys through and passing.
Yeah.
It was a good feeling.
Yeah.
And so I'm just always like incredibly thankful to you for that specifically.
I don't know if I've shared it with you lately, but I do recall. So remember, it's 37 months on that assignment as an instructor. Mm-hmm. I taught, I want to say a total of 16, 17 classes. They're 5-week courses. And I think the total students that I had impact on was 512 in those years.
Mm-hmm.
Each student has a story and a background. You have their reason why briefings. Yours is actually one I do recall among my 512, because you set this audacious goal that you would get out of the military and have your own practice. If you recall, the culture of sexual assaults in the military was huge. And you addressed the niche market, or the market that seems to have been overlooked. The men who were sexually assaulted. And because when you hear the term sexual assault, the typical image that comes to mind is a woman who's been sexually assaulted. That's not the case, as the numbers prove. It's kind of cool to see anyone I interface with say something like, in 5 years, I'm going to do this. And 5 years later, there they are. And it's like, wow, that's pretty freaking awesome, dude. I had a couple other students say similar things, and yeah, sure enough, they did what they did. It's really cool just to watch others kind of set a goal. Have you ever heard that term, BHAG? Big, hairy, audacious goal, and then like just not just achieve it, but like sometimes exceed it. So it's really cool to watch that. There's an insurmountable amount of pride that always wells up when I watch you grow. And like I watched I remember you put out a post once on Facebook when you first made it big. I guess the Denver University or some Colorado University interviewed you, and you did some shout outs. You dropped my name, and I was like,
I mean, it was almost like you were one of the guys that wrote my recommendation to get into the competitive program.
Yep. Yep.
It's so funny. In these moments, right, my chest is getting tight and I'm getting uncomfortable the more you say good things about me.
I get it.
And it always goes back to that, like, those who can't do teach, right? Like the fundamental thing I think guys need in life are guys that pump them up.
That's
Right?
true.
Guys that they see you, they support you, and then they laud you. But we're also kind of raised and trained to dismiss that or be publicly uncomfortable with it, or don't let it be seen that it impacts you. Right?
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Yeah. It's kind of seen as like bragging. And it's such a strange phenomenon if you think about it, because that's not what we need as humans. We don't ever achieve anything on our own, anything great on our own. And yet we have to sit here and try to celebrate individual achievement. And I'm like, that's rarely true. Like when we say somebody's in the military, and I had another student, one who I met yesterday for coffee, talk about that. His perspective that he learns from his non-military friends is that when someone has a former military background and they have a resume that applies for the company, a lot of folks think they're some Jason Bourne kind of skilled individual. And it's like, that's not the case. If you look at the military jobs and roles out there, there's tons that come directly related to civilian roles. We have admin folks, medical folks, logistics folks. We just wear the uniforms different, but we do the same jobs. To your point, I tell people I'm in the Air Force and like immediately, oh, what plane do you fly? Right? That question, you've gotten that, I'm sure.
I have gotten
and
that
I'm
question,
like,
yeah.
no, that's not what I do. And then, of course, same thing. If you say you're in the Air Force or you know of Air Force, you think of the pilots, and you forget that for every pilot, there's literally 80 to 100 people supporting that mission to put them in the sky and bring them down to Earth. So it's a very forgotten image that it's not one person is responsible on their own for accomplishing anything great. It's a huge tribe effort, clan effort, community effort.
Well, that's what I see. Like, I certainly missed it, and I continuously talk to guys who get out who miss that feeling of importance within the whole.
Yeah.
Like the adage I always like to go to is a president is touring an aircraft carrier, right? Floating city.
Yeah.
And the president comes across the mailboy and this lowest rank guy on the ship who's just delivering the mail. And the president stops and says, young man, what do you do on the ship? Sir, my job is the most important job on the ship. He's like, oh, what do you mean? If I don't deliver this, the ship doesn't turn. If I don't deliver this, we don't eat. If I don't deliver this, we don't go armed. My job is the most important job on the ship, sir.
Yeah.
And you don't get that in any other environment, in my experience.
Well, yeah, it's hard to. I would say there are non-military environments that do that. Sports environments seem to have a good team mentality. They seem to have a good appreciation for others on the team.
Well, I think that was a big fundamental shift for Seattle when they got to the Super Bowl. Was they had brought in a mental health specialist and changed it from a competitive culture to an accountable culture is how they framed it.
Oh.
Like, hey, what's your part in this play? What are you doing? Yeah, okay, they messed up. What are you doing about what's your end?
Yeah.
That got a lot of traction. It was nice to hear some mental health being talked about in athletics a little bit.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of, I guess, the rising epiphany from modern culture to understand that health isn't just that physical side. Mental health is super important. I see it in today's lack of good leadership is the ones that don't address mental health. They have that, we called it ethnocentric thinking in class, right? You judge the world by the lens that you have on and expect everybody to see the world the same way that you do, but that could be further from the truth, right? Everybody has a set of lenses they gain over time. I guess that pertains to how masculinity is, right? We are all kind of sharing a common television lens of masculinity, and that's kind of what I say when I'm like, hey, I'm in the Air Force. Oh, what plane do you fly? I'm like, it's you jumped immediately to what Hollywood has conditioned you to think.
It's one of the big things in the training that I do for civilians. I got the start of this training because I was doing training for professors on campus and working with veterans. And just one of the basic things anybody ever talking to any veteran ever is when you find out somebody was in, just ask them what they did.
Yeah.
You have no idea what they did based on the branch they were in. And it's okay. You don't have to. We don't, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So you get a lot more out of people that way too.
I hear the question, what's your MOS, from people who are non-Army and non-Marines. And I'm like, I get that you're trying to speak the language, but that doesn't apply to me. Right? Like, I'm like, you're asking about my job. It's this. I'll just tell you. And then I'll translate it to I'll translate the civvy talk. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I feel like the Air Force is the branch that kind of bridges those languages a
Big
little
time.
bit, where we've
big
got a lot
time.
more corporate speak than the other branches.
Very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. You were talking about the various kind of bad leadership stories that you heard.
Yeah.
And something that I keep hearing out into the world of like leadership now is leadership trauma. The idea that you've worked somewhere or you've been under somebody's authority and that authority was misused on you in some way.
Yeah.
Is that a concept you're familiar with?
Oh, I definitely would say it's definitely a military thing. Leadership trauma. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would absolutely, I don't even have to go beyond those two words to research that. I could be like, oh, I could give you examples off the top of my head of what that would probably mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, here in 512, at least 512 students in leadership classes, stories. And then beyond that, just my day-to-day supervising and having experiences in different units, additional duty first sergeant, for example. You'll hear how other folks think that whatever behavior they did was the right thing. And I'm like, what made you think that this was right? And they're like, well, my last leader always made us blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's like severe micromanaging there. I don't need to know what you do every weekend. And you're a grown man. You're in your 30s. Like, why do you have to tell me what time you came home? That's nothing. That's just some weird stuff that nobody has you do that out here. So yeah, it's just strange. And that to me is an example of what I perceive to be leadership trauma, that they were so conditioned to act a certain way, namely folks that are like micromanaged. That's a level of trauma there. As a grown adult, have to ask permission to do like the most basic things.
It just saps your confidence, right? Like, what do you see in me that I can't do this?
Yeah.
You're my leader. You see this, and apparently you don't think I can do it.
There is this saying, analogy, or I don't know how you want to call it, that the junior airmen of the United States Air Force. I'm a Space Force guy too, so I have to try to track that. But the junior airmen of the United States Air Force are the most powerful weapon in the world. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard that one? Because when I hear people talk about like, what is the most powerful? Well, for all intents and purposes, it's a nuclear weapon. And for all intents and purposes, nuclear weapons like guns don't go off on their own. They need airmen. And there are junior airmen literally out there that are turning keys and getting to that point, like guarding these machines and letting them operate. So it's like, dude, we have these very young airmen, and airmen enveloping men and women, right, in uniform in the Air Force, that we entrust with the world's most powerful weapons. And yet I'll have an experience with them where they'll tell me something that they had to do that makes me question what kind of leader or manager, right, micromanager, would ever say that to you or have that expectation of you. We trust you with multi-million-dollar aircraft or world devastating weapons, but I have to have you check in on like the most basic things you do. That makes no sense, right? Like the two don't track, you know what I mean? I'm like, the hell? And that to me just indicates a lot of insecurity and perhaps a lack of masculinity when it comes to certain leaders. I don't know. I just don't get it. But
well, I think it's an alignment with that. Like, men are competent. When you're young and you're trading on kind of masculine status, it's for the things that you show up with, right? Are you tall? Are you handsome? Are you smart? Things that you didn't necessarily earn, but you show up in the world with. But the older you get, manhood is through competence. Are you good at something? Do people respect you for what you do? And I think people mistake competence for control.
That's true. Okay. I can agree to that. Yeah.
The fundamental frame for abuse is control. And so by tying masculinity to a need to control and a need to control others, it never goes well. There's always going to be a crash and burn point on that track somewhere.
Think about what you're saying, and I'm like, yeah, that's really what I see in those folks that are causing leadership trauma. They are doing more controlling behaviors or attempts to control behaviors than they are influencing and empowering others, which is, again, it's just sad. It goes against the culture that's written in the text of the Air Force, in the text of the military. We enlist you or commission you when you're an adult. At the same time, like, you're expected to come in and recognize that you made an adult decision. And at that point, you made an adult decision to be here. It's your choice to be here. Nobody held a gun to your head to come in, sign these papers, and swear your life to defend the Constitution. Nobody did.
Yeah.
But now that you're in, live up to our rules, live up to our culture. And then, again, there isn't an actual culture where we want toxic masculinity or we want leadership trauma to occur in a unit. We want units to be cohesive, trusting, safe. The term safe is somewhat new. It wasn't really seen as safe back then. I think back then, and when I say like 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, right, the term was just respect and dignity. It was a place of respect and dignity. And you earned your keep based on what you did and what you didn't do. One of the reasons why I stayed with the military culture is just because of that. Like, harder I worked at something, the better things became.
Yeah, I mean, the military is huge, and a lot of people have a lot of different experiences. But if you get between more than one unit, you will generally find opportunity for work to be success.
It's true. Yeah.
And it's not true in every unit. And there are plenty of people I talk to and have worked with as clients where the military experience for them was not empowering.
Yeah.
But I think you and I got particularly lucky. And I think our experience is more in line with a lot of folks, is just in who I talk to on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, you're right. I think I might have said this plenty of times in our class, and I say it in other places I go. Whenever you share an experience or you share your perspective, and you and I can share like 100 positive examples, but one other person can share one negative example, and somehow that seems to stick in more minds than these positive examples. And I'm always like, y'all forgot that there were like 100 things that went right. And the only thing you want to repeat that somebody said one time who could have been bragging and could have been literally a stolen valor perspective is just this lie or this one bad example that can happen anywhere. You know, there are micromanagers everywhere. Authority gets abused everywhere.
Yeah, and it's that need to flex on the world to feel secure. I always like working with business leaders and the like in my practice, because if I help them be less of an asshole, I just improved like 100 people's lives.
Yeah.
Right.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's so good.
It's amazing, yeah.
And consistently, the ones that come in that are working with me start to hear the phrases that let you know they're micromanaging their people and they're really feeling overburdened by trying to do everything for everybody and watch everything. Is this feeling of inadequacy that they're holding, that, you know, they're holding that responsibility and taking it seriously, which is a good thing. But they're letting the responsibility overburden them where they forget that you can't hold it by yourself. That you need a team, and to lead a team is to get everybody carrying the responsibility, not to carry everybody.
Yeah. Well, that makes me ponder a lot about previous leaders I've had. And I go, yeah.
Well, and just me and the mistakes I've made as leader. I've made a number of them in various roles, from bad moments as a professor, bad moments in student government, bad moments as a sergeant. And it's always one of two things. Either I wasn't paying attention because I was lost in my own BS, and maybe for outside reasons, maybe for inside reasons, but I was in my own stuff and wasn't paying attention to my people.
Yeah.
Or I was feeling insecure about my role, and then that landed on my people.
Yeah. You remind me of like these, I've taken numerous leadership courses. I love them all, but they all have a very common theme. Every good leadership program starts with self-awareness. But then, of course, it has to expand beyond that, right? Your impact on others, how you adjust, how you yourself stay fluid. You're like, I think the best leaders are still lifelong learners. They could have been leading institutions or organizations for 40, 50 plus years, but the best ones to me are the ones that are like always willing to kind of force themselves to take the perspective of the most junior member under their care and learn whatever that perspective is. Those leaders that I find and ever find working for, believe me, I'll follow them to the ends of the earth. And I'm pretty sure I may have exhibited some of their behaviors, and I've had others kind of say the same about me. And I'm like, well, I learned it from so-and-so. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
More than likely, that person learned it from somebody else. And that's kind of what we try to perpetuate is the good stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part. One of the first people I interviewed, we were talking about the need for mentorship, right? And that has to be organically experienced. People talk a lot about creating environments and such, but it's the kind of thing that only happens when people are around each other. You can't force it.
Correct.
And I think a lot about masculinity, the perception of the military, and the perception of military leadership. And I always think back to Air Force basic training for this one. So you had the TIs, right? And these were guys that were trained on how to break you out, make your life miserable on purpose, and these ways to pull these levers.
Yep.
It's, what is that course? Like a 3-month training to be in that role or something like that?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's around that.
So what was interesting is everybody that was trained within the squadron of basic were very purposeful in how they beat on you. You know, it was very tactical and whenever they were messing with you.
Yeah.
But since it was in-housed on Lackland, I just remember anytime that you left the squadron to go engage with another part of the Air Force, there was always someone who wasn't trained who tried to do the drill sergeant thing. Right? There was always some personnelist, there's always somebody at medical that just was bullying. And that's all they were doing. They were just bullying because they had no idea what they were doing. They were just projecting this is what an Air Force sergeant does. This is what a leader does.
I can see that because culture permeates organizations and sub-organizations. I myself have not dealt with that at Lackland. I just didn't experience a lot of Lackland other than the training environment.
Mm-hmm.
Man, but I could absolutely see that in and around Lackland because that's the gateway to the Air Force. So everybody on that location kind of just knows that they're surrounded by trainees, and trainees you need to maintain that type of mentality and environment to them. So I could kind of see the jumping on the bandwagon, but I could also see where it's not appropriate unless you're the direct TI for an individual. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're not trained in what is happening,
correct,
and up to date on like this week we're doing this to them, this week we're doing this to them, this week we're doing this to them, you have no business.
Yeah.
Trying to disrupt this very thought out, very tactical, very purposeful engagement with people. I think the reason why I noticed it a little bit more is I was 28 when I joined.
Yep.
And I'd done some papers on what basic was supposed to look like. And so it was very clear when people from the outside would kind of fumble around in it. But the reason why that's on my mind now is when you think about masculinity and you think about being in uniform, being in the military to be one of the few ways that most Americans agree on is like, oh, that's a man. He put on a uniform, that's a man. That's an earned status.
It's an earned status, yeah. Yeah.
And it's an unquestionable status in most cases.
100%. Yeah, there's definitely internal and external masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
And wearing a uniform, whether it be military, police uniform, or firefighter uniform, if you did anything to earn those uniforms and you put it on, it is automatic external masculinity from man's perspective. Like, it wasn't easy to get this, and what I do with this on is worthy of respect.
Yeah. I
can see that.
It's one of the things I shared in the first episode is it was the most empowering thing for my masculinity was that status that somebody can't take away from you. No one can take away my service. Whatever happens from here, I have that. But people who haven't been in it, the ideal of masculine leadership is this Hollywood version of the way that the military engages with each other, which is this either like very cocky power, like negotiation of space, like in Top Gun, right? Where you've got these pilots that are just like bowing up on each other all the time. Or, you know, like with the famous gunny sergeant from like Full Metal Jacket, just like everybody in the military is a Marine drill sergeant.
Yeah.
And Marine drill sergeants are special. Like I love Marines. I love my Marine drill sergeants I've worked with. But that's not even 95% of the armed service.
Correct.
And if you behave like a drill sergeant on somebody actually trying to do a job,
Right.
you're failing at your job.
And causing the other person to fail. The chances of mission degradation with drill sergeant behavior, is very high. And there are very few cases where it'd only be applicable, but it's likely not outside that training environment, that boot camp environment. So, prison, I guess, or the brig, right? That could be another place for that type of behavior to correct someone's extreme behavior.
It's a whole nother discussion.
Correct. But to me, there's very few cases where that type of behavior is useful to the service and the way we serve our country. Yeah.
Well, and just the way that young men who are hoping to become leaders or looking for a leader look for that sometimes and look to become that, except they're not trained.
Yeah.
It's not a real thing.
Right.
It's a very protected, like in this very, very orchestrated environment. This is when this happens.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. It's only useful in an environment, at a place and time, at the right sequence of time, right? At the right phase of training. Typically, there's that sequence of breaking down the individual. Like, remember when we come in as rainbows, we're all different colored, and then we emerge as a unified squad or a unified tribe, you know what I mean? Just a unit. Yeah, it's the whole goal. And you got to go through that sequence of breaking down and building them up slowly and then refining persona. And then, whether you build a Marine, build a Guardian, or a airman or soldier or sailor, you definitely go through a very similar breakdown and build back up process.
Yeah, and I think about that a lot when it comes to different types of leaders. The one thing I love about leadership is there's no like respect and trust are key rules for leadership, but there is no like required voice of a leader.
Yes.
And I always think back to my time in Korea where I had some of my favorite leadership that I had while I was in. I had now General Downs as a commander back then when he was still just a light colonel. And I got to do some shadowing of him and got to be mentored by him. It was a really, really powerful gift in my life. And he was kind.
Yeah.
Actively kind. Like he was the commander that he knew your family's names.
Yep.
I had a friend of mine that came out to teach English near base because he knew where I was going to be stationed. And Colonel Downs would ask me about my friend, which is just above and beyond, right? That's huge. And he was the one that was like, hey, we do a hard job, be with your family when you can. And he was also the commander that would come through operations at 2 a.m. at least once a week just to see how things were going.
Yeah.
Right. And then his first sergeant was this angry stoic man.
So they had the right combo then, it sounds like.
They definitely had like the heat and the cold, right?
There's definitely I would say, a history of good leadership pairs. Yeah. The one with the most rank typically is the nicer, kinder one. And the one right below them is the enforcer, right? That good cop, bad cop routine. That's very effective. It's very effective.
Yeah. I just remember it was funny. I really didn't like my first sergeant. He was a big, imposing guy, and I thought he was bluster, right? He was just throwing his stoic anger around.
Okay.
And then I started paying attention because I was working with an airman who had been assaulted. And she was in our unit. And at the time, there was a huge issue with people getting orders to leave. Like the personnelist office was just 3 months behind on everything.
Okay.
And so here's this person trying to get away from the space, trying to go start their life over somewhere new after this horrible event.
Right.
And it's paperwork making it so they can't leave.
Yeah.
And I watched as he walked into the personnel's office once it got to him and lit them on fire.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Just came in and like intimidating, angry. You are not fucking with my airmen.
Right.
I will destroy you.
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, her hours were cut in an hour. Right.
Yeah. Within that.
Yeah. And I remember like, oh, no, he knows how to aim this.
Yeah.
Okay. Like this is a thing. I'm not like this. I don't have that in me. I can't be that guy, but having that guy's nice.
Yeah. I would say in that right? In that example, we teach this. Effective and efficient, right? Was it effective? Yeah. Was it efficient? Sure. Was it
Mhm.
appropriate? I got to ask that question. In the long run, I probably wasn't, because to me, what he did is disrupt the process for others and possibly caused a ripple effect of negativity down that personnel office's world. So that ripple effect to me is what I think about with that type of behavior. But though I
I feel like that
understand.
was a 10, right? Like if you, I like to teach clients, and something I always try to keep in my mind is the 10 scale, right? Like one
Okay.
being, I'm just being as soft. I'm so soft. I don't know that I want anything or have a boundary. And 10 being like, I physically take or enforce my boundary,
No, no,
right?
you definitely spoke about a 10 example there, and
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen them. I feel like sometimes in that case, is again, it's justifiable. It's a justifiable case. It's just I grow
There are
concerned
better
about
ways.
I grow concerned that there could have been a better way, perhaps putting that type of pressure on the leadership of that office behind closed doors, and that
Mm.
person knowing how to drive their people to the most effect, letting them do that. Because again,
Yeah.
folks, especially that,
Negotiating with a peer instead of lighting juniors
yeah,
on fire is
yeah,
usually the way to
yeah.
go.
Using your authority downward is rarely an effective long-term solution. Again,
To be
you
fair, he was
explain.
staring down a rank peer.
Okay, well then, in that case, again, but at the same time,
Yeah.
dressing somebody down in public, oh man, it's
It's
just
always
so
going
much
to happen.
effort. Yeah, it's so much after effect that I grow concerned about. There's definitely times to do it. There's
Mm-hmm.
definitely times. I'm all about dressing a bully, like a known bully, out in public.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be
Uh-huh.
dressed down in the open. Yeah, after so
Well, and
many.
just on like a social justice level, right? If there's
Correct.
something you care about and a guy is behaving in a way and no one calls him out in the group,
Yep.
it tends to cause problems, but there's ways to do it
Hmm.
and there's volumes to start at.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why him doing that bothers me less is because I knew all the different times that different people from the unit had come and tried to address it.
Oh, again, yeah. It sounds like
That was not
the
the first
other.
visit.
Okay, no, that makes more sense. That
It was
context adds
just
some
his
light.
visit.
Yeah, no,
And
that
I remember
context adds some light for sure. Yeah.
I just remember I was such an ego, like a little ego. He was on his way out. I was leaving. And at his goodbye party, I walked up and I told him, like, sir, when I came in, I originally didn't understand what you were doing and I didn't like you because I thought you were just a bully. And I have to say, I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
And I really respect what you did. And he was like, this, like, E3 is
Yeah.
telling me he didn't like me like I care.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, well, I didn't like you either, man.
Yeah. He probably got defensive right away. Yeah. You know what? So you say that again, that's something else in the military. That's kind of a two-way street, right?
Mm.
Your rank defined who you were, because you just said this E3. Like I knew who you were. You said it yourself. You came in at 28 years old, but you were wearing the rank of a 19-year-old. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And essentially, when you walk up to somebody with that rank on your sleeves, they're going to look at you and be like, oh, okay, this is typically what you kind of know. I walked around the Pentagon and with Master Sergeant stripes and Senior Master Sergeant stripes. And yeah,
It's a rough spot.
it's weird because my peers are much higher ranked than me and on the opposite end. They're the commissioned end or senior civilians. My skill set just got, the depth came to our senior NCOs in my career field. And they phased out the officers and developing the depth. So for
Yeah, I
me,
mean,
it's different.
that's in all the branches oath of, like, once you hit the senior NCO is to mentor and guide officers.
Oh yeah,
Right.
one of the best things I've ever heard is one of the sole purposes of a senior NCO is to grow the commander you want to work for.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're supposed to mentor lieutenants and captains to become these officers that you will one day serve with and be proud that these are the types of leaders you help shape. So I've always loved that thought and that adage about what the purpose of a senior NCO is.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that I want to be respectful of time, so I've got to kind of put a bow on this a little bit. The biggest thing that I want guys to hear when you're thinking about how to be a leader and a man at the same time is don't try to be a drill sergeant. Try
Okay.
to find your respect, try to find your competence, and then figure out a way that your voice, the way that you exist in the world,
That's true.
fit with
correct.
that. And because there's a range of different ways to do it, and there's no static one that works for everybody. And by trying to be that static version, you're almost always going to be making mistakes.
Correct. So to your point, and what I learned in the military is leadership does not have a one size fits all. And the best leaders figure out who they are, and then they find their leadership voice, develop what that leadership voice is that's most effective for their style, experience, lens, and perspective on life.
Yeah.
Some leaders, however, are truly, they can be perceived as drill sergeants just because of their voice demeanor. But like you said, right, if they have control over that and they know when to use it effectively, and that's their most optimal leadership style. I could tell you, I tried that route when I was young, and it was like 3 days or something. I immediately felt out of place trying to enforce some sort of abrupt leadership style. My leadership style has been and is still today a very inquisitive, very patient, and methodical.
There's a lot of no nonsense in you.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'll look for the information that's not being presented, and I'll ask those questions, and then I try to be really thorough in discovering reasons for behavior.
Well, it's funny, like a lot of the like science fiction and stuff I read with like different authors and everything, you often pop into my mind because the kind of theme in a lot of those aspirational kind of leadership fantasies is by people expecting competence from you, you move mountains to be competent.
Yeah.
And that was always something I felt like when I watched you and when I was under you for that little while.
No,
This expectation of competence comes through and you want to achieve it. You want to be what your leader sees you as.
yeah. No, so I will tell you, you came through, you weren't one of my first classes. I would say by my fourth or fifth class, I felt like I found my groove as an instructor. And an instructor teaching leadership, you get really good at the concepts you're teaching, right? I would say you get sharpened every class. And I don't know, I'll have to share the virus example with you in a second if you don't remember it. But man, I'll tell you, by the time you and others after you came through me, I felt like, dude, I was meant for this job. I got it. Like I'm getting real good at it. I could do this the rest of my life. Thankfully, though, I didn't do it because it actually is more beneficial for instructors to come back out into the wider force and be a change agent wherever they went. That's what I see with a lot of folks who come out of PME. They're just rock stars as soon as they get back into units.
Yeah.
After being in those,
ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, passively
all the guys I saw that did multiple tours in the training environment back to back, I think you just kind of lose yourself in the sauce.
Yeah.
Like
and you get out of touch with operations.
Yeah, you're just too like aspirational, or it's kind of like academics, like a PhD talking academics and engineering versus talking to an engineer. And
correct.
A PhD knows a lot and it's a cool conversation, but they're missing things.
Yeah. No, 100%. You can't be in two worlds at once, right? Let me speak to that virus example real quick, just about leadership. I'll tell you that after doing a tour of PME, professional military education, 37 months of it, I did not have a cold, a sniffle, or anything for about 5 years. I didn't get sick. And the analogy I have is that I came in, my first class, I was healthy. Somebody in class had cooties and germs, spread it around, passed it to me. By the time they graduated, they're gone. Now I'm sick between classes, right? As soon as I feel better, the next class comes in. I get to share whatever I've mutated in my body to the next class. But then that germ virus mutates, grows within the group of students, right? And I'm healthy. Near the end, though, somebody in that class passes it back to me again. And that's like version 2 of this. Yeah, version 2 of the virus. And then version 3 is the next class. And what I found is as that virus got stronger and stronger coming from one class to another, I was the carrier who was passing the stronger virus. Just like I was the carrier passing the lesson plan that I enhanced every class. I enhanced from the experiences shared with me by the students. And then I made better for the next class. And then I leveraged the previous class's worth of experience. So my 5th class was better than my 4th, but my 6th was better than my 5th, and so on and so on. And I got smoother. I felt like I didn't have to look at the curriculum. Of course, I did my due diligence, but it got to the point where I kind of felt like I knew the lesson well. And I got to focus more and more on the student experience and then tailor my ability to bring the most out of them and then tie in their specific life experiences to what the experts said about, like, here's how you do public speaking, how you do conflict resolution, time management, group dynamics, team development. It's really good that way.
Yeah, well, that's how you gain mastery, right? If you don't teach something, you never master it.
That's true. I guess to that point, though, when I was talking earlier, and I mentioned this real quickly, internal and external masculinity. External masculinity is right on the surface, like wearing a uniform. That's why people with stolen valor feel that external masculinity, but it's artificial, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they lack the balance of internal masculinity through growth of competence, that trial and error, that forged through the fire kind of experience, if you don't match your external masculinity with your internal masculinity, I think you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, there's a dissonance and it hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it will rub and something will break loose in your life that you don't want to lose.
Yeah.
Every time. I think that's a good transition point to now come poke at you personally.
All righty. These are the questions.
So, these are the questions I know that have been
All
kicking
right.
around in the back of your head.
Yeah.
So the first one is, what's a truth about masculinity you learned before you were 12 that remains true today?
Ooh, before I was 12. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Before all those hormones kicked in and messed things up.
Yeah. What is a truth about masculinity that I learned before I was 12? Oh, this is a tough one, but I think I got it because now a couple examples come to mind. Real men cry. Real men cry. I felt like the culture that I was around, and I'm born and raised in the Bay Area of California and in the Valley eventually of Sacramento, California, and in a Filipino American environment. A lot of my culture and my like aunts, uncles, namely the men, always try to keep this like proud image of themselves. However, when somebody died, I was surrounded by a culture that totally exhibited crying as a normal thing. And then I'd watch TV, some drama show, and then the men would try to like hold back the tears, and I was confused by that because I'm like, in my family unit, my culture, we totally allow and encourage that type of behavior. Crying as a man in appropriate times is absolutely true. So I knew that before I was 12, 13 years old.
I love that for you. And I think the importance of the inappropriate times, right? I
Sure.
feel like most of my job is reminding guys that they don't have to hold it together all the time, but they do most of the time.
Yeah.
And when you're in that experience, funerals are so powerful because of the shared grief, because everybody's there is allowed to be hurt by what's been lost and by what happens. And if you keep that part of yourself back, you grieve alone.
Yeah.
And
it hurts. It hurts
tragic.
a lot more in the long run. So I've grieved alone and tried to keep a straight face at a very hurtful time in my life. And I probably should have. I know I should have. I should have grieved during the pain openly. But I thought keeping a stoic image would be helpful because I'd be that rock for others. But I think the others actually needed me to be there with them, going through the thrash rather than trying to keep
they missed out on your
stoic image.
expertise.
Yeah.
And they didn't need your protection.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I think that in those moments when the big pain happens, we're immediately put into crisis mode and we're looking for an all or nothing decision to make it through. And that's where those decisions on that stoicism, we decide we're going to be away through this big, long, painful thing instead of acknowledging I need to be like this with this today, with these people. When I'm with these people, that's when I can let this out. That's where I can join this community. But then I got to go to work Monday. I got to get it back together.
Yeah.
And that's hard because it literally, like, our system goes into crisis. And crisis wants black, white, yes, no.
Yeah.
Go stop. That's beautiful, man. I'm so glad that you and your family had that. The next question is, tell us about a time where the pursuit of men had hurt you.
It's tough too. Pursuit of manhood. This has to be like my junior military years. Says,
It's a
I
good time for
imagine,
those.
yeah, I imagine many men have experienced this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pursuit of manhood. Oh, that's like, there's so many ways to say it appropriately, inappropriately, and I'll try to say it in a more appropriately way, a more appropriate way.
Whatever gets the story heard.
Getting with your first woman is a rite of passage, right? That we as men kind of impose upon other men,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
there's definitely this culture of pressure to just go get it done. And once you're there, you get to celebrate. I would say it hurt me because like knowing what I know now, right? Looking back, it's one of those things you could think back on and go, and that was such a dumb thing to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
to be pressured to do something that one, you didn't feel comfortable doing, and two, you were doing it in a way that others that did it their way worked for them, but doesn't necessarily work for you. And you set yourself up for being somebody you're
And
not.
probably didn't work for them, but it's a bunch of
Correct.
young guys.
Yeah, it's a bunch of young guys
around.
Yeah, you're all pontificating like you're experts at the game.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
playing a game instead of
It did not.
connecting.
Yeah, it did not work for me. And it created lots of insecurities that only in the last 10 years have I been able to reflect and
Mhm.
understand that the failures of approaching women, for example, or approaching things or relationships that I was pursuing were not the rejections that I feared or made up in my mind or experience are not the types of things that were helpful. Yeah, it did not help as a man to be pressured and give into that pressure. But again, would I regret or do I regret anything I've done in life? I can't really say yes to that because everything that I've done has helped me become who I am today. And as long as I'm able to learn from that and change my behavior and then help change the behavior for others from avoiding those mistakes, I think it's a worthwhile lesson for me to have learned and then pass on the lesson learned to others and hopefully guide them from hitting the same pothole.
That's the trick, right? You can't learn without failure.
Sometimes that's true.
And the life is, when we're figuring out connection, we tend to get stuck on how we do it the first time. And depending on how that gets pushed out by the guys around us, by the status around us, it can mess us up for a good while, man. I'm glad you came out on the other side of it.
Definitely different than I came into it.
Like,
Yeah,
whoa,
for sure.
whoa, man, not done.
Yeah,
I'm trying.
yeah. Still, yeah. Again, exactly. I mean,
I'm not dead. I'm still changing.
Still
okay?
changing.
Give me a break.
I would say, yeah. There's still things that I'll probably think of 10 years from now. I'll look back and go, yeah, I could have done that one better. But yeah.
Yeah, I heard early in the counseling career, somebody said, if you're not changing, you're dying. And that always sticks with me.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not moving forward and you're staying still, you're actually falling behind.
Mm-hmm.
With reference to time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Well, we're going to go out on a happier note.
All right. Last one.
Last one.
Well, last of these questions.
Yeah, that's fair. What's a time where pursuing your masculinity empowered you?
You know, what's tough about these questions is that I'd have to define masculinity first, right? Because I have an assumption that my understanding of masculinity is the same as yours or whoever the listeners are.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the question, is that it's very intrinsically tied to yours.
Yeah,
so if your masculinity is different than my idea of it, and pursuing that version empowered you, that's important for people to hear.
I don't know. I guess it's this. So I'm trying to think of 3 different examples, and yet this one keeps coming to mind. All right. I have this. Let me explain masculinity, at least in my mind. I subscribe and believe in the thought that a masculine behavior is having the ability to produce great violence. And then also having a greater ability to control it and keep it under wraps. So in one of my many masculine pursuits, I'm very much a big fan of contact sports. And for so many reasons, I feel like they force the most amount of effort out of me. They give me the most amount of drive to do better and compete harder, whether it's rugby, mixed martial arts, and in these days, I box. And what I'm trying to get at is, in pursuit of masculinity, I believe that it's a masculine behavior to be ready to protect those who you love, physically protect them, put your life on the line and defend whatever danger comes their way, no matter the danger. And in my pursuit of I'll just give the example. In boxing, you train to not necessarily hit the bag or hit someone else. You train to understand that you will get hit, right? You will be damaged. It's how you react to it, you roll to it, and then adjust accordingly. And in that, I would say it's improved a lot of my outlook in life. It's improved a lot of my confidence. But I've learned this lesson since I was very young. I took karate lessons at a young age. You know, before MMA got big through UFC, I was sparring in various martial arts, Kempo, kickboxing, Taekwondo.
You tried on a few hats.
Wrestling, BJJ. I tried on a couple here or there, and even in the military offered some classes while deployed to Kuwait. We had some combatives courses I took, just wherever the opportunity presented itself. And then rugby was another. I played rugby for a couple years. Rugby's a great time. That's a very raunchy group of human beings, a very, very raunchy group of human beings, but not too many tighter groups that you can make good friends with for life. But yeah, lately it's been boxing, and boxing keeps teaching me that physical pain is a part of life, and being ready to take on physical pain is an aspect of masculinity that I believe we should all understand. Because if you don't understand physical pain and the ability to take it and give it back, you truly don't understand. I believe you truly don't understand that the reality is mankind has had violence in our past, and it's those like us who train to control it and refine our ability to potentially produce violence when the need arises. Again, for me, the need will arise if I feel that anyone in my family is in danger or I myself are in danger, because I need to be here to protect them for as long as I can live, right? I'm going to be here to protect the ones I love. Yep. And then, of course, a truly masculine individual does not portray that they can exhibit violence or push violence or produce violence to others. A truly masculine individual will keep quiet when a violent environment erupts around them. And it's up until that last moment where there's no other choice, will you see how violent I can be. And I will make sure I shut the situation down real quick, fast and in a hurry, and then return to what I was before, right?
Well, I'm too old to mess around now. If it goes there, it's just whatever gets it done.
Yeah, no. I think that's actually one of the best things that I can think of to that answer. I think that we are, just say men in general, we're built to be bigger, broader, right? Like in general, for a reason, and that's to defend our families. That's a masculine behavior.
I think it is a masculine behavior, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with a woman coming into that role.
Right? I agree. Oh, yeah, 100%.
And there's nothing wrong with a guy who can't. However, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being the person that's holding that physical aggression and knowing you're holding it for a reason, that you're competent with it, that it's for the protection of the people around you, and that by being willing to be someone who's willing to step into some pain and willing to cause some pain when appropriate, that serves a purpose, and that's empowered.
No, that's it. I mean, again, it reinforces a lot for me, because like when we talk about that artificial masculinity, that external and internal masculinity that others have, I find that a lot of bullies who try to exert what I call like fake violence, right? They bow up, they speak loud.
But they've never been punched in the face.
They've never been punched in the face, likely, or they'd never been stood up against. And especially, like, I'm 5'7", man. I'm 5'7", 180 pounds. You know, I've had some people raise their voice around me, and I've stepped into their physical space and stood ready to exert my violence. And it seems to work quite often that they back down because they're just not used to that. They've gone and run around unchecked. And, Yeah. One thing I
Or
know
even if
is
they haven't, like I had it happen one time, and like I've been punched in the face before, right? I've been in those violence, but what it told me in the moment that made me back down was, oh, I've pushed something I didn't mean to push,
sure. Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And
In
so
that
like,
context, you're right.
and the other person didn't know they were responding in a way that was appropriate for what was being threatened for them. And I think that's just mammal communication on a certain level, right? Like there's always the option to back down,
True.
right? But there's always importance to like, hey, this is where the line is.
Well, that's the context in which I approach my example. There are
Yeah,
just
100%.
some who have gone around and have effectively thrown their weight, height, and presence around and have gotten used to that behavior and have been unchecked. And it creates toxic environments. It creates that leadership trauma you just mentioned, whether it be in a military setting or in a professional setting. And some folks need to need to have somebody stand up to them. I believe it's a masculine trait. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a man or a woman in this case. Just somebody.
But that is a service that
Correct.
masculine folks provide.
Correct.
Yeah. I think it's good though that these conversations are happening more in this nuanced way of to be violently capable does not mean to be violent.
That's absolutely true. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, you absolutely don't. Yeah, definitely
And
don't.
that's effective
Yeah,
masculinity. Like
correct.
if you've got that aggression in you, if you've got that physicality in you, there's nothing wrong with it. Just learn what to do with it.
Correct.
And once you learn, it's such an empowered thing. Like I remember in high school, all the way from elementary school into high school, I wouldn't fight and I was tall. So I got bullied and beaten fairly regularly to the point where
Really?
I'm pretty sure I had ribs cracked in middle school.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden something clicked over. I found a girlfriend I liked that I was tired of people bothering me about. And the minute I decided I was willing to hurt somebody, it all stopped.
Yeah.
I never once had to lay hands on anybody in my social circles. It just all stopped.
Yeah.
And that's that confidence that it gives you. Once you have that willingness, you can take a hit, but you're pretty sure you can dish something out.
Yeah.
You move through the world in a much more peaceful fashion.
And that's the irony, right?
Mhm.
It's having the capacity and capability of violence actually allows for more peace. It is
100%.
it's a strange phenomenon as well. But again, it's as a masculine behavior, having violence and controlled violence.
Well, and a
Is
key
it?
component for your presence as a man. It's
Yeah.
been powerful for you. I've heard you talk before about just that capacity making you feel like a better father,
Mhm.
making you feel like a better husband. I think that's a really wonderful way to channel it because so many guys are unsuccessful in channeling it effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, if you were to actually translate it to relationships, being able to stand for yourself and draw a boundary, not necessarily
Mhm.
with your hands or through violence, but being able to just with your voice and presence hold your ground and say this is not going to happen any further. I will not do this. Like when I draw a boundary, it's always explaining what you will not do.
Mhm.
The other person's going to do whatever they're going to do, but the way you react to that is how you establish the boundary. And when you do it firmly and you do it with a type of confidence and surety that the other person sees is unwavering, yeah, typically it stops a lot of the nonsense behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to an effective boundary is that you know that if it goes far enough, you will go to the 10 on the enforcement of the boundary. I will not tolerate this. And by knowing and having the confidence of that, you've got the volume knob. You can start at that, like, hey, man, you're being a little out of hand. No, I mean it. You need to stop.
Right.
And then all the way up until it's time, right? But it's much more likely to be heard when you have the confidence of knowing if it escalates, I'll be fine. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to bother you again because there's so much I want to pick your brain about through this process. But I really wanted to focus on leadership and our shared story here.
Yeah.
And I also just wanted the
Definitely.
opportunity for you to hear the impact you've had on me.
Oh man, I mean, again, I appreciate it. So I did this LinkedIn post yesterday because again, I'll tell you about Joel. He's a former student of mine through a Airmen Leadership School. right? He got out after 2 tours. So he's out in the civilian world before I got out in the civilian world, just like you. And in his rise through the corporate structure, he goes from job to job and gains experience, how to translate a resume, what he's seeing. And he gets into the recruiting side of things. And he's now seeing military members like just fail nonstop in how they approach resumes. And he starts advising them. And before you know it, he starts doing posts on LinkedIn and starts to get involved with various organizations. And he's making a name for himself. And I'm watching his stuff going, look at this guy, man. Once I was his public speaking instructor, leadership instructor, but here I am.
He's schooling the world.
He's schooling the world, man. I'm like, God, this is so awesome, man. Like, I'm learning so much from this guy that was once my student. And I love that. I love that epiphany I had, and I had to share it with my LinkedIn community. I said, I forget the name now. It's like, it's a J and J. It's a French essayist from the 1800s. He said, to teach is to learn twice, right? So anything you teach, you learn twice. Because you have to, right? You learn when you're giving it, and then you learn when the questions are asked about what the lesson is. I had this epiphany that the real gift of teaching is to learn from those you once taught.
Yeah.
Man. So from you, I have learned so much in our experiences, and I have learned it while you were my student in class. The way that you can exude, I could call it masculine energy and power through a caring voice, a caring presence is actually more powerful to me than those who raise their voice or use intimidation. Intimidation does not affect the way that a masculine behavior with care, like honest, genuine care, can reach wider audiences. And I learned from you that helped me mutate my virus, my leadership virus. And then the students that came after me and my troops that came in my career afterwards were all enriched by what you had inadvertently passed to me, whether you realize it or not. And it's been doing that through all my years. So yeah, man.
Thank you so much for that. The frame I like for the kind of kind, direct communication as a guy is intimidation stops things, and it's important. You need to be able to do that in the world if you want to operate as a man in the world. But you're not going to change anything.
Good point.
Through intimidation.
Yep.
Change only comes by helping people see what's happening. And you can't do that by thumping them into the ground. And I learned that a little bit from you. That was Stephen DeGuzman. The biggest takeaway I hope you got from this week's episode is when you're trying to be a leader and a man at the same time, don't try to be a drill sergeant. Find your respect, find your competence, and remember that leadership doesn't have a one-size-fits-all. The best leaders figure out who they are and then develop out their leadership voice. And don't forget this week's tool sheet, Leadership Through Competence Instead of Control. It's there to help you identify your own leadership struggles and how to improve them. Go ahead and take a look at it and let me know if it's helpful to you. I really want to make these episodes and these tools as useful as I can to you, and your feedback is critical for that. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.